Welcome to Zines and Roger. This is the tutorial for a chevron scarf. I've called it the Lorax scarf because a viewer of my crochet podcast said it reminded her of Dr. Seuss's The Lorax. So that's what I've called it. So thank you, Ophelia. I think it's the colours that do it. So this is my scarf, and I will show you how to do the stitch pattern for this. I'll give you the link to Ravelry so that you can go and check out the pattern for the actual scarf, which has a chart and row counts and the written pattern and all of this for colour changes and how you go about doing this stitch pattern. This is a super giant scarf. It's nearly 3 meters long, but I wanted it to be that way, and I also wanted to bust my stash. So this has all leftover yarn, and I just wanted to sort of share that it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, I have got Aran weight yarn in here next to sport weight yarn next to double knit. I've got a merino next to an acrylic next to a blend of something else. There's all sorts of things in here, and you wouldn't notice when I'm wearing this scarf. You cannot see at all that all these things are different. So it is the ultimate stash buster. So you can make it as big or as little as you like. Chuck that over there. Okay, so this is where I found the end. I'm going to do a sample swatch of the stitch pattern so you can see how to do it. And for this I'm going to chain 37 to begin. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. First row is always the trickiest because you're working into a wibbly wobbly chain. In the fourth chain from the hook, 1, 2, 3, 4, you make one treble, a UK treble, a US double, and I'm cheating. Well, I say cheating. I'm just going to go in the top loops of each chain just for the tutorial. If you want to be a bit more neat and tidy, then use these back bumps, these ones here. Bump, 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 bump. It just means that when your project is finished, you get a nice tidy chain on the other side rather than sort of loose ends. But for the sake of quickness, I'm just working into the top chain. You can do whatever you like. So fourth chain from the hook, you've made your first stitch. Miss one chain and then make another stitch into the next chain. Then skip one chain and another stitch in the next. So without skipping any chains, make a stitch in the next, what is it, 1, 2, 3, we want 4 all in a row together essentially. I'll show you in just a sec. One, 2, 3, 4 all in a row. In the next stitch you make 5 trebles or USDCs all in the same chain. 1, 2, cat hairs included, 3, 4, 5. Then another 4 along. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you can see, we have made a little peak. And to make the trough, peaks and troughs for our chevron, skip the next stitch, the next chain, skip that one, and then make a treble, UK treble in the next. Skip the next one. And my yarn's gone AWOL. Down there somewhere, it's fallen off the table anyway. I don't think you can see, but it keeps sliding everywhere. And then again, miss a chain and go into the next one. We're beginning to create a chevron already. So that's like your trough bit, and then skip the next one, and then we're going to do 4 along again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's back with the 5 and the 1 chain on its own. Fighting with the yarn today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1. So it's the same as the first peak. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so basically you're just repeating your peaks, which is 4 next to each other, then 5 in 1 stitch, 4, and then for your troughs you skip a chain, make a stitch, skip a chain, make a stitch, skip a chain, make a stitch, skip a chain before doing your 4, 5, 4. And then when you get to the end and you finish your pattern repeat, you skip a chain, and it's almost like you're going back into the trough again, but then you sort of stop halfway. So there's your 1, then you skip, and just to make it slightly not a complete trough, you make 1 treble in that last chain. So when you're on a treble row, a US DC row, you always start and end with 2 trebles next to each other. Boop, boop. Boop, boop. And yeah, that chain counts as your first stitch there. If you'd excuse me, my children are arguing about Minecraft downstairs. This is your first row. The next row is dead easy. Chain 1, which doesn't count as a stitch, and then you're just making UK, DCs, US, SCs all the way along. You don't need to do any shaping or worry about anything else other than just plopping your stitches in each stitch. Keep going to the end. As you get to the end, don't forget that the chain 3 at the beginning counts as a stitch. So you want to pop the very last DC, SC into the top of that chain. And then you turn your work, and in row 3 is where you sort of get eyelet-y. So chain 3 to be that's your first stitch, and in the next stitch it's a treble. skip one stitch before going in again, and the same again. So I don't know why I'm sighing. Okie pokey, that's how you start off this eyelet round. So it's a chain 3, and then immediately you've got your next stitch, skip 1, make a stitch, skip 1, make a stitch. Now it changes slightly, so chain 1 and skip a stitch before you go to make your next treble. Is it alright if I just say treble rather than UK treble, US double? I think we've established that they're different. It's confusing, hey? Right, chain 1 and then miss a stitch, go in again. I think we're at the peak. So you're also in the same stitch, chain 1, make 1 treble, chain 1, make 1 treble. And that's the top of your peak. And essentially it's the same number of stitches as this one, only your chains represent where the stitches would be from this row. So you've still got 5 stitches in that peak. It's just that 2 are eyelets. Chain 1 and miss a stitch. Chain 1 and miss a stitch. In the trophy bit, it's lots of skipping stitches and trebles in between. But unlike here where we've got some chains in between, for the next few trebles there are no chains in between because you want it all to bunch together. So skip 1 stitch and then do a treble and repeat that, I think, to have like a little trough of 5 all together. Hang on, let me show you. Let me show you. I like to pretend that here is my peak and it's 2 mates side by side, and then separated by a chain you've then got 5 stitches all hanging out together in a little valley. And then you're gonna chain 1, miss a stitch and do a treble, chain 1, miss a stitch, and then back to your peak. Sorry, video cut off there. So there's your peak, your next peak again. Chain 1, miss a stitch, do your treble, chain 1. So you've made your peaks, buddies. And then, you know, if you've got a lot of multiples, then you go back to doing your 5 stitches all together with no chains in the middle. But I'm at the end already because this is just a little swatch. So you're starting your trough, but then just before you get to the end, no skipping any stitches, just plop a treble in the last stitch. Chain 1, and it's another row of baby stitches, and you do that all the way along without any shaping or anything. Nice mindless row, at which point, if you wish to, you can change colour, stick to the same colour, do what you like. And it is a chain, 1DC USSC into the chain space as well as the top of the trebles. So tops of the trebles and in the spaces between. And there are no spaces in these troughs, remember. Just, I think where I've been wrong on this is that I have indeed sort of forgotten to put a stitch in a chain space somewhere, or I've added a chain space like somewhere in here where there wasn't supposed to be one. So yeah, sometimes mistakes like that can be made, but for the most part it's pretty intuitive. And if you do make a mistake, then it's pretty obvious when you get to like the next row, and certainly the row after that, you'll be out by a stitch and you'll go, oh right, I've added one. And it's very easy to sort out. What row are we on? Row 1, 2, 3, 4, row 5, row 5, row 5, chain 3, 1, 2, 3. It's pretty much a repeat of this, but instead of working into chains, you're just working into the stitches. But ultimately you have got a repeat of a more blocky row and an eyelet-y row in between rows of smaller stitches, and it's just repeating those. So chain 3 to count as a stitch. In the next stitch do a treble, skip a stitch and then do another treble, skip another stitch for the next treble, which is the first of your 4 as before. Before going into your 5. 1, 2, oh, I don't need to count, do I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 4. Rogue yarn escaping. I'm sorry if you can hear my kids. They are playing computer games. And then it's miss a stitch, 1 treble, miss a stitch, 1 treble, miss a stitch, 1 treble for your trough. Whoopsie, I did not mean to let go of that stitch. Then miss a stitch to do the 4. I hope the footage is okay today. I turned up the brightness on my camera for the very first time because I didn't realise you could do it until today. I was always concerned that my videos were too dark, and now I'm concerned it's going to be too bright. Don't know what you think. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and then 5 in the stitch. It's a lovely pattern repeat. I can't wait to get to the next peak so I can do a lovely 5 in a row. I can't wait to do the colour changes. I really enjoy doing it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And at the end of your row, just the same. Skip and then 2 stitches in those last 2 stitches. 2 stitches and the 2 stitches. And what you are doing is repeating, doing a row of DCs, USSCs, and then back to your eyelet row, back to this row, back to the eyelets, etc., etc. And that is how you do the eyelet chevron. If you liked that video, then please do give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and you can also support me via Patreon. I'll put a link down below. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Cheerio. Bye bye.